You know, there's a part of our bodies we pretty much ignore. But what if I told you that science is revealing it to be a secret master controller of our health? In this explainer, we're going to dive into the truly surprising connection between your gut and your brain.
We've all been there, right? Those days where you just can't focus, or those nights where you're tossing and turning and just can't get to sleep. We usually blame the obvious stuff, stress, maybe too much coffee. But what if the real secret to your mood and your sleep was hiding somewhere else entirely?
I know, it sounds a little weird, but a huge wave of new research is pointing to this really unexpected place: the trillions of microbes living inside your gut. It turns out they're a massive player in how you feel and how you sleep. And we're not just talking about digestion here. This is a hidden conversation that is literally shaping our daily lives.
All right, so first up, let's talk about sleep. How exactly does your gut affect it? You might think a bad night's rest just gives you a bit of a stomach ache, but the science is showing it's way more than that. It's a constant two-way conversation going on between your gut and your brain.
And this is where it can get messy, because it creates this nasty, vicious cycle. See, when you get poor sleep, it can actually harm the good bacteria in your gut. But then, an unhappy, unbalanced gut can turn around and trigger inflammation and disrupt the very chemical signals your brain needs for good quality rest. So one problem just keeps making the other one worse.
Okay, so if an unhealthy gut can mess with our mood, it leads to a pretty wild question, doesn't it? Could we actually fix our mood by transplanting a healthy gut? It sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, but believe it or not, researchers are actually testing this radical idea as a way to treat depression. The procedure has a very clinical name. It's called fecal microbiota transplantation, or just FMT for short. And the goal is pretty straightforward. It's basically to reboot a person's entire gut ecosystem by introducing a whole new, healthy community of microbes from a donor.
And look, this isn't just some tiny niche experiment. A major 2025 study did what's called a meta-analysis. That just means they combined the results from 12 different high-quality trials involving almost 700 people. When you pool data like that, you get a much, much stronger scientific signal than any single study ever could.
And the conclusion? Honestly, it was pretty striking. The analysis found that FMT significantly reduced depressive symptoms compared to a placebo. I mean, that's powerful stuff. It's real evidence that we might just be able to treat the mind by fixing the gut.
Okay, but how, right? That is the big question. How in the world can changing the bacteria in your intestines have such a direct impact on something as incredibly complex as your mood? Well, the answer lies in what you can think of as a biological superhighway.
The official name scientists use is the microbiota gut-brain axis. It's this master connection, this multi-lane superhighway that allows your gut and your brain to be in constant communication with each other.
And this superhighway has three main lanes, three key ways the conversation happens. So number one, chemical messengers. Your gut microbes are basically tiny chemical factories. And get this, they produce over 90% of your body's serotonin, a key chemical for mood and sleep. Number two, the nerve pathway. A nerve called the vagus nerve acts like a direct data cable, just zipping signals from the gut straight up to the brain. And number three, the immune system. If your gut is out of balance, it can trigger inflammation all over your body, and that directly impacts how your brain functions.
So the promise here is just enormous, right? But like with any brand new science, we've got to take a step back and get a little reality check. The research also shows some really important details, some nuance about how well this works, and crucially, for how long.
For example, it turns out that how the treatment is delivered actually makes a difference. If you look at this chart, it's comparing taking oral capsules versus more direct methods. The lower the score here, the better the result, the more it reduced depressive symptoms. And you can see that while both work, the data suggests that direct delivery seems to have a slightly stronger effect. It just goes to show there's still fine-tuning the best way to do this.
And that brings us to the big question: how long do the effects last? Well, this timeline tells a really important story. You see, patients had significant improvements for up to about 5 months, but after the 6-month mark, the positive effects started to fade, to the point where they weren't statistically significant anymore. So what does that tell us? It suggests that FMT might not be a one-and-done cure. It could be something that requires ongoing treatment to maintain its benefits. And here's maybe the most crucial piece of context. You see it right there. The authors of the meta-analysis, the scientists themselves, graded their own certainty in the evidence as very low. Now, that does not mean the findings are wrong. It just means this is a super new field, the studies are still pretty small, and they all use slightly different methods. So it's a really exciting signal for sure, but we're just not at a definitive conclusion yet.
So after all that, where does this leave us? Well, I think we're clearly standing at the very beginning of a huge paradigm shift, a totally new way of understanding just how deeply all the systems in our body are interconnected, and what that could mean for the future of medicine.
Okay, so let's recap the big takeaways. First, your gut and your brain are locked in a constant two-way conversation. Second, this gut-brain axis powerfully influences everything from your sleep to your mood. Third, early research into therapies like FMT shows incredible promise for treating depression. But, and this is a big but, the science is still in its very, very early days.
And this leaves us with one last, really fascinating question to think about. As we learn more about this hidden world inside us, will the future of mental health care be less about a single pill and more about tending to the personalized, living ecosystem within our own bodies? It's a pretty profound thought, and one that science is just beginning to explore.